what somebody wrote and said, the media now hiding killing.
You know, they're hiding killing now. What they're hiding? Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Good morning and welcome to our regular Sunday morning news conference put on by the United National Congress. On my left is my colleague MP Ravi Ratiram from Couva North, and I am Rodney Charles, the MP for Naparima. My colleague will be speaking in the area of agriculture and I in the area of national security, both under the theme that what we have from this government today is not substantive policies, but propaganda and public relations. Now this morning when I look at the papers, one sees clearly that crime has gone amok in our country. I look at the Guardian, I see 5 killed in 4 shooting incidents. That's on page 5 of the Guardian. When I look at the Sunday Newsday, one sees crime, but bodiless cameras. 1,120 body cameras purchased for officers by Topcom, but lack of technological infrastructure preventing the use. And I see weekend begins with 3 murders, and the same thing with our Newsday. It is bloody 72 hours as gun violence continues. 7 killed, 8 injured. Clearly, Trinidad and Tobago is in crisis. Under Dr. Rowley's failed leadership, we could say in the dialect that we're going through. His prime ministership is in total shambles. Unlike Boris Johnson in the UK and the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, he must consider stepping down before it is too late. As a result of Dr. Rowley's leadership, we may best change the name of our country from T&T to TT, Tombstone Territory. National security, the core function of a government, is in total shambles. We have police killing police and misadvising the acting commissioner of police. We have police killing 3 citizens, reportedly shooting them from behind. We have a Minister of National Security who was described by the President of the Prisons Officers Association as all talk. Yesterday talk, upstairs talk, downstairs talk, side talk, swing talk, spin talk, all talk, but no action. As we speak, some lifeguards are not on duty this weekend at some beaches, reportedly because of Heinz's monumental incompetence and failure to address their concerns. The Minister of National Security, instead of identifying the root causes of the riots in Port of Spain and addressing them, wastes precious time trying to find out who paid whom to riot. Now, absent incompetent, clueless, loquacious Heinz, appointed by Dr. Rowley, we must ask the Prime Minister as head of the National Security Council, why are you so cluelessly hopeless in dealing with crime? Why are citizens feeling unsafe, Dr. Rowley? What are you doing about carjackings, about home invasions, about rampant shootings, about violence in schools, about spousal abuse, about gang warfare, about an inefficient judicial system, an under-resourced DPP's office, a failed secondary education system, which you says takes angels from our primary schools and turns them into bandits, criminals, and demons. Your words. The only action we are aware of since you became head of the National Security Council is interfering in the process of appointing a commissioner of police. collapsing the Police Service Commission, and bringing the office of the President into disrepute. Now, these unconstitutional, illegal actions have led to a crisis of leadership in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is yet to be resolved. This is the only action of which we are aware. So Dr. Rowley, the UNC, wants to say today, this morning, that the buck stops with you. On crime, you have failed our country. We believe that all you do is specialize in old talk, propaganda, hoodwinking us, and PR, and not on effective policies and specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely plans. We call these SMART plans. Dr. Rowley, when it comes to performance on crime, you are found wanting. You are what we may call a non-performer of the highest order. And it pains us to say this because this is our country. You are not performing because under your watch we have become the 6th most murderous country in the world based on international reports. Our major trading partners tell their citizens through travel advisories not to visit Trinidad and Tobago. And if they do, avoid our beaches and huge chunks of our capital city, which your party has controlled continuously since 1956. We have 284 murders for the year. A recent weekend which recorded close to 20 murders. We are headed for close to 600 murders for the year. And many citizens, especially the elderly, live under self-imposed 6 p.m. curfews. Yet at the same time, the Acting Commissioner of Police tells us that gangs are now specializing in home invasions. So your policies are not making sense, Dr. Rowley. You, for example, you are committed to recruiting over 1,400 municipal police. Are they properly deployed? We already have 10,000 SRPs and police officers for a population of only 1.4 million. Toronto, by contrast, has 5,000 police officers, half ours, for a population of 3 million, twice ours, and they have less than 100 murders annually. So the solution is not more police, but better trained, equipped, and managed police officers. So the UNC is asking, what is the job description of the head of the National Security Council? The country dearly wishes to know what are the job functions, with Dr. Rowley's job functions, so that we can make an informed assessment of Dr. Rowley's performance. Does your job, Dr. Rowley, as head of the National Security Council, entail PR, propaganda, and passing blame to everyone except yourself and your government? What has become of the bogus 10-point crime plan? You blame crime on women making wrong choices in selecting partners. Everything except taking responsibility for our crime situation. You blame women for making the wrong choices. You blame your own schools by confessing that they produce criminals. You blame the Law Association for not bending to your will. You are minded now to blame parents for poor parenting. Clearly, your utterances do not reflect well thought out policies. They are, in our view, Pontius Pilate-like, designed merely to distract and attempt to absolve you from the disaster of crime which we see on our daily newspapers every day. We ask the question, how can you blame parents and not accept responsibility for not providing our breadwinners who head homes with decent, well-paying jobs? How can you blame parents when you have destroyed the middle class, the bedrock of social stability in any society? And that was a comment made in the papers, published in the papers today by the president of the Public Service Association. Destroying the middle class. How can you blame single parents, Dr. Rowley, when you close down and or fail to complete early childhood centers, which the United Nations tells us gives preschoolers from poor homes a fighting chance compared to their better off peers when they enter primary school? How can you blame parents when you refuse to provide laptops so the first cohort of primary school graduates under your watch experienced failure rates which were the worst in our history? How can you blame parents when under your watch over 70,000 jobs have been lost? All these things were provided by Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar-led government, but your government took them away. So the problem of crime in Trinidad and Tobago rests, in our view, squarely on the shoulders of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. But Dr. Rowley, the problem of crime starts at the very top, in your cabinet, by the poor examples set for the population. Your crass, belittling, insensitive, intemperate, and crude language, which you employ repeatedly when facing legitimate scrutiny by MPs and journalists, that sets the worst example for our youth. Recusing oneself from cabinet decisions in which one is conflicted may be legal, but it is highly immoral, Dr. Rowley. It is a poor example for our citizens. Recusing once or twice for a conflict of interest is understandable, but over 200 times, your cabinet is therefore using their positions to profit directly from the treasury. And our young citizens looking on say, if the priest could play, who is we? The 200 recusals collectively has never occurred in our country, and it may even be a first in CARICOM. Dr. Rowley, you have within your ranks those who are yet to satisfactorily explain attempts to make large deposits in a local bank, and another who has plagiarized on university exams. Using state funds to buy non-disclosure agreements to hide bad behavior by one of your selectees is unethical. And Dr. Rowley, we are putting it to you that quote, taking full responsibility for Attorney General Amos, end of quote, irresponsibility in Miami, in no way diminishes the disrepute into which he has brought you, Dr. Rowley, your cabinet, and by extension, our country. Now, Dr. Rowley, your latest scam, we call it, in your usual irresponsible manner, is to deem crime a public health emergency. What a PR man we are dealing with. I ask you, on what basis have you declared our crime crisis a public health emergency? Did you discuss this harebrained idea beforehand with the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Pasram, and others in the Ministry of Health? Our public health service is itself an emergency. So is this a scheme to hand the national security job to DLC, given the fact that you do not wish to assume the portfolio yourself, and given also your dissatisfaction with Heinz's performance? Is it a scheme to pass on the portfolio to someone else since you do not want it? Is it that you wish to impose draconian crime fighting measures under the guise of a health emergency, as you did with COVID? Or are you thinking of applying your failed COVID policies that resulted in over 4,027 deaths to our crime fighting efforts? So the time has come to accept, Dr. Rowley, that you, Dylan, Stuart Young, Fitzgerald Hines are utter failures. You have fallen down badly on the job of dealing with crime. You have made us the crime capital of the region and of the world. You have citizens, especially the elderly, cowering in fear, living behind bars in their own homes. Young people migrating if and when given a chance to so do. So we are saying, Dr. Rowley, do not wait for riots against your failed policies and these riots to become the norm in Trinidad and Tobago. Do not wait for the murder rate to reach 1,000 annually. Do not wait for gangs to take over and control large parts of our urban areas. Do not wait for all of Trinidad to become quote-unquote stink and dirty under your watch. Do not let your legacy be that of being the worst prime minister ever in our history. Do like Boris Johnson and take the right action. Do like Rikme Singh from Sri Lanka and go. For the sake of generations yet unborn in this country, Dr. Rowley, do what is right. For our part, a UNC government will increase spending on crime prevention and crime rehabilitation from the measly 5% which these two critical areas receive in the annual national security budget. We will increase it from 5% to 40%, close to half, and we'll do that within 2 years. The UNC will therefore reduce by half the 300 million plus annual budget given to the SSA, which could not even fully anticipate the recent Sealot riots, and spend that on cadets, scouts, and scouts only received less than 50,000 last budget, 4-H clubs, school sports, and police youth clubs. We will give these young people hope rather than putting the money in crime suppression to lock up, shoot, and imprison. The UNC, for its part, will separate the functions of the Army, the Coast Guard, and the Air Guard, which deal with the defense on the one hand. We will separate that from internal security agencies such as the TTPS and Immigration Services and others, so that there will be focused attention by a minister on these internal security agencies. The UNC will also set SMART goals for our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And once these SMART goals are set, every attempt will be made to achieve them. So we'll set the goals and we will work back from the goals to see what is necessary to achieve those goals. You know, Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Successful People talks about beginning with the end in mind. So SMART goals may include reducing the murder rate by 10% annually. We will commit to that and then work back to see what we need to do in order to reduce the murder rate by 10% annually. We will improve police response times to 10 minutes. We will commit, for example, to reducing recidivism rates in the prison population by 10% annually. Or the remand yard population being reduced by 10% annually. We will set clear, measurable, attainable, time-bound goals that the population can judge us by. A UNC government will also increase the qualifications for entering the TTPS, possibly to at least associate degree or equivalent, and will ensure that a standard program of training be put in place, which, for example, will require all police officers to receive firearm training, retraining annually, or mandatory training in crisis de-escalation approaches. So when they approach a crowd, the police will be informed and equipped to de-escalate the situation rather than leading to crises and shootings and killings. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is in crisis, and we feel that the time for public relations has gone. It is time for action. It is time for clear goals. It is time for us as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to feel safe and secure in the boundaries of our country. I hand you over to my colleague, the MP from Couva North, MP Ravi Ratio.
Thank you very much, MP Rodney Charles. Good morning to the Leader of the Opposition and Political Leader of the United National Congress, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, my colleague MP Rodney Charles, and my other parliamentary colleagues, members of the media who are our valued partner in this exercise, and to all of you joining us via the various social media platforms in this media briefing. A pleasant good morning to one and all. Today, brothers and sisters, we are here to talk about the PNM is putting propaganda in place of policy. As the opposition's shadow minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, I want to begin by addressing the whirlwind tour that Prime Minister Keith Rowley has recently been on, and to state that both the words and the actions by the Prime Minister prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is clueless as ever with respect to our nation's food security. Keith Rowley has spent approximately 7 years as Prime Minister, and only when our nation has been thrown into a state of crisis with respect to food price inflation that we are now hearing him speak of the importance of investment into agriculture, when his failed government has done everything in their control to destroy our agriculture and fisheries industries, even having funding allocated to them, 500 million stimulus package, investment into agriculture that was passed in the parliament in the appropriation bill. They did absolutely nothing to save our agriculture industry, brothers and sisters. Speaking to the media last week, Saturday, on the 2nd of July, Rowley mentioned that he was part of a CARICOM initiative led by Guyana, which was about preparing to make our region more food secure. And I want to take a moment to quote what it is Prime Minister Rowley said. And I quote, he stated, "And for that to happen, a number of other things had to flow from that meeting, not the least of which are the interests to be generated for the kind of investment to be made to produce raw materials for food production on a scale that would provide some level of comfort and security to the region." So after 7 years of mismanagement and destruction to the agriculture and fisheries sector, where our country experienced a consistent decline in the contribution of agriculture, forestry and fishing to the gross domestic product of Trinidad and Tobago under this Rowley-led administration, we move from $1.47 billion in 2015 to $1.28 billion in 2020. That is our gross domestic product, our contribution to GDP into agriculture, brothers and sisters. Let me remind you of when it was reported in the national media on the 3rd of October in 2018 that this same Keith Rowley believed that this country would never be able to diversify the economy using agriculture, since it does not have enough land space to to earn economies of scale, which is critical to competing globally. You all remember that? When he said, and that is Keith Rowley himself said, that agriculture would never be commercially viable to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. This has been the policy of Keith Rowley and his PNM administration. And now he wants to come to peddle pure propaganda to hoodwink the nation and mislead our CARICOM brothers and sisters to believe that he cares about investment in agriculture. Now, how ironic it is for Keith Rowley to find himself in no other place but Guyana to discuss these matters, which I hasten to remind you, brothers and sisters, he wanted to hear nothing about Guyana just a couple of months ago, when my colleague, who as fate would have it, is sitting right next to me, was asking him in Parliament to identify in measurable terms what economic benefit arose from his visit to Qatar. This was after Keith Rowley refused an invitation to attend Guyana's energy conference, opting instead to address an almost empty room in Qatar. If I recall correctly, my colleague, the member for Naparima here, MP Rodney Charles, asked Prime Minister Rowley whether it would have served the country better to go to Guyana instead of Qatar. And I think we are all very familiar with the derogatory, unparliamentary, and crass retort that was given by the Prime Minister when he responded. If I were to summarize Keith Rowley's sudden reprioritization of attending meetings in Guyana, I would say that it is one out of desperation and to initiate damage control more than anything else. The Prime Minister spoke to a follow-up meeting in August to be organized and held in Trinidad and Tobago for the purpose of, and I quote, where we hope to interest those persons in the Caribbean and Caribbean friends in finance who can see our initiatives as opportunities for investment. I want to ask the Prime Minister, are these opportunities going to be made available for our farmers or members of the public to benefit the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? Or are they going to be only for friends, family, and financiers of the PNM, as has become the norm with this PNM administration? The PNM has spoken into investment in agriculture year in, year out for the past 7 years now. And after spending approximately $7 billion on agriculture, they have absolutely nothing to show for it. They are saying, well, there is this saying, mouth open and story jump out. Well, the Prime Minister in his ramblings at that press briefing happened to open his mouth and a piece of confession on the failure of this government happened to jump out. And I quote him when he said, and if we are to in fact seriously impact our food security nervousness, we have to get into serious production. If we are to in fact seriously impact our food security nervousness, we have to get into serious production. And that is an area that is a very high priority, which we are trying to move it from talk to action. Move it from talk to action. This is what have always happened under this Rowley PNM. No action, it's only talk, talk only, pure mamagism and pure propaganda to hoodwink the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So that maybe when he said that, perhaps the reason why the Prime Minister nor any member of the lower house stood up to defend the government when I piloted a private member's motion under the guidance of the leader of the opposition on Friday, April the 22nd, 2022, a motion which is stated, and on this date, Friday the 22nd of April 2022, under the leadership of Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, the leader of the opposition, I had the privilege to pilot this motion in the Parliament. And I want to quote for you this motion. Whereas the government's neglect of the agriculture and fisheries sector has created a food and nutrition security crisis, and whereas the government continues to ignore the plight of farmers and fisherfolk relating to pre-deal larceny and piracy, And whereas the government has failed to establish an appropriate strategy to address this food and nutrition security crisis and runaway food prices, and whereas the global supply chain challenges poses a serious threat to food and nutrition security, and whereas the government has failed to reduce barriers and bureaucratic red tape to facilitate greater inefficiencies in the agricultural and fisheries sector, and whereas this food and nutrition security crisis will lead to increased poverty, unemployment, and widespread starvation, be it resolved that this House call on the government to acknowledge the food and nutrition security crisis and to take immediate measures to prevent food insufficiency and starvation in the nation, particularly for poor, marginalized, and vulnerable groups. This was since April the 22nd this year. Honorable Political Leader Kamla Prasad Bisasa guided me through this, and we placed it in motion. We brought it up on a private members' day. At that debate, brothers and sisters, not one elected member of the lower house stood up to oppose this motion or to defend the Prime Minister and his government, because perhaps they all recognize the food security crisis the government's neglect of agriculture sector has created in our country today. Imagine just yesterday it was reported in the national media that the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Kazim Hussein, said that he has received a complaint that, and I quote, the local agriculture sector is not farmer friendly at this time. This was reported on the TV6 media last night. Well, I want to advise the Honorable Minister that we in the opposition have been receiving this similar complaint since Keith Rowley administration took office. Keith Rowley and his PNM administration have failed to address the simple present-day needs of our farmers, our fishermen, and in general, the population of Trinidad and Tobago, especially those living on or below the poverty line. What short-term measures are going to be put in place to stabilize food security and food import? I want to ask the Prime Minister to answer this to the citizens of our country. Is the government looking at import substitution? Is the government looking at reducing taxes and tariffs and demurrage charges to reduce the cost factor that food importers and wholesalers have to pay, so that our consumers, our citizens, will not see an escalating price when they go to the supermarket? What is the government doing in the immediate short term to address food price inflation? Imagine, brothers and sisters, just between 2020 to June to now, why is it that oil, something that almost every family use, has risen by 100% from $40 and $45 to $90 to $100? Rice by 50%, flour by firstly 14% and recently a further 33% increase in flour. Split peas, 35%. Things like canned vegetables, we have seen a 50% increase. Meat like lamb experience a 60% increase. Goat meat, a 50% increase in the price of goat meat. And well, let's not talk about chicken. Chicken has experienced an 80% increase under this administration, when we could have gotten 3 chickens for $100. Now for that same $100, you will be lucky if you can get 1 chicken. Some families have to survive only on chicken foot and neck. That is what this Prime Minister Keith Rowley and his failed PNM government has brought our sweet Trinidad and Tobago to. The Prime Minister, in his press briefing on Sunday the 2nd of July, he continued to mislead the population and peddle his PNM propaganda when he stated, and again I quote, TNT is self-sufficient in chicken poultry. This is far from the truth, because TNT does not produce our own hatching eggs. This we import, and we are at the mercy of both suppliers and transportation lines for these. If any disruption occurs to the supply of hatching eggs, then there is certainly going to be a resultant impact on the further increase in the price of chicken. So again, I say that there is no plan by this government to address the drastic increase in the price of poultry that consumers now face. Brothers and sisters, another major aspect of the agriculture sector affecting most of our farmers is the government failure to address the issue of pre-deal larceny. At any mention of pre-deal larceny squad, the former Minister of Agriculture seems to have a very hands-off approach, even going so far as to cast in aspersions regarding to the treatment of the vehicles provided to the pre-deal larceny squad. And when questioned on his failure to maintain these vehicles, instead of he took responsibility, he continued to blame members of the pre-deal larceny squad, those hard-working officers who risk their lives going outside there to deal with the bandit and the criminal element. Wee hours of the morning, in the rain, in the night, he chooses to blame these hard-working officers to cover up his failure to maintain the vehicles for the pre-deal larceny squad. Down in Naparima by MP Charles, the group down in Kunjal and the Councillor Rafi and others had to come together and donate things like battery and tire to get the vehicles repaired so that the pre-deal larceny officers will be empowered to service the community. While the administrative and operational aspect of the pre-deal larceny squad remains primarily under the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, there is a component that relates to the Ministry of National Security, which is the outfitting and resourcing of the squad with respect to things like uniform and arms and other stuff like that. While the former Minister of Agriculture seems to have abandoned officers of the pre-deal larceny squad, the squad remain up to now wholly under-resourced to deal with the criminal scourge as it relates to agriculture. And both Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of National Security at this time seem contented with just ignoring these issues entirely, while our farmers continue to suffer at the hands of the criminal element out there, my brothers and sisters. In this country, MP Charles would have mentioned to you, nowhere is safe in this country, nowhere on land and nowhere on sea. And I want to now turn to the matter affecting our fisher folks with respect to piracy out at high sea when they go out to ply their trade. Brothers and sisters, just this week gone, 2 more members of our fishing community narrowly escaped with their lives after being attacked by pirates out at sea. The 2 brothers, Clinton and Dennis Lochan, had to swim for 4 hours to reach the shore in Labrie. Following the incident, I issued a press release dated July the 6th, which condemned this latest act of piracy against our fisher folk, and I called on the National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines to properly resource our Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard so that they can be able to effectively do their job. I spoke personally to one of the Lochan brothers who relayed to me the details of his trauma. But before I go into the incident, brothers and sisters, I want to share with you recommendations that I presented to Minister Hines on the 14th of June 2021. And I want to quote this letter that I wrote to Minister Hines. Recommendation for improve the safety and security of a fisherman. This was presented when I met with him personally, along with representatives from the fishing community in Claxton Bay and Calibre. The recommendations were as followed. 1. Establishment of a Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard TTPS base in central Trinidad, Calibre Fishing Facility, and on the north, south, east, and west coast of Trinidad to decrease the response time to emergencies and to increase the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard presence. The Fisheries Division, who were present at these meetings, had indicated their willingness to partner with national security to identify space in various fish landing sites. Up to today's date, brothers and sisters, What has Minister Hines done with respect to establishing these forward bays to provide safety and security for our fisher folk? Well, I will go into that. We ask him for other things like the construction of security booths at Cali Bay, installation of CC cameras, the coordinating with the Minister of Public Utilities to improve lighting at Cali Bay, something as simple as that, just to improve the lights at Cali Bay. Up to now, he nor the Minister of Public Utilities seem to have awakened from their slumber and get to work. Both of them, two incompetent ministers. We spoke about a functioning radar system as a matter of urgency. Well, he didn't want to go into that because he said that is a matter of national security. But we found the radar system supposed to be able to spot from a pirogue coming right back to any vessels out at the sea, straight up to Grenada. So if it is an act of piracy occur, brothers and sisters, where one vessel intercept another vessel, after they leave that location, wherever that vessel goes, on the functioning radar system, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard is supposed to have the technology to find that vessel and respond to the incident that would have taken place. But up to today's date, Minister Hines continue to fail this nation and to fail the citizens and to fail our fisher folk, brothers and sisters. I want to go into the issue that took place. Clinton and Dennis Lochan, who left King's Wharf on Sunday evening to ply their trade, when around 8:20 p.m. they were accosted by pirates who, after forcing them off their fishing boat Zach, made away with the vessel. The brothers then swam for close to 4 hours before arriving on shore at Labray. While this ordeal in itself was very traumatic, the events that followed is even more reprehensible. In the news release by AZP News, it was stated, and I quote, "They were taken to the Labray police station where a WPC made every effort to contact the TT Coast Guard station in Cedros. The phone number she had for the post was not working, so the police at Labray was unable to call the Coast Guard post in Cedros. When finally the WPC was eventually to get in touch with an officer at the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard station in Cedros, she was told that there were no Coast Guard vessels available for them to respond. After receiving a tip-off, the story continues. After the brothers received a tip-off as to the location of the stolen vessels, one of the brothers approached the Coast Guard officers at the San Fernando Yacht Club for assistance in retrieving the vessel. Again, they were told that there wasn't any Coast Guard vessels available. They offered to provide a boat, but was told by the officers that they could only use the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard vessels. You hear the kind of madness happening in this country, brothers and sisters? I want Minister Hines to come out and tell us how long now that Coast Guard, that forward base that you were supposed to set up at Cali Bay based on our discussions, or off Clip Deco as what was recommended to you, you went and put a Coast Guard base at the Yacht Club in San Fernando. And how long did the pirogue that you made available to those Coast Guard officers lasted? I understand in just a short space of time, the pirogue that those officers, those hard-working Coast Guard officers had down in San Fernando, it sunk, and it was then taken and moved for repair. And from then to now, you have failed to replace that with a working vessel for these Coast Guards in San Fernando to be able to effectively patrol the Gulf and assist our fishing community. Today I call on Minister Hines to immediately launch a full investigation into the events as reported with a view to seeking answers as to why the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was unable to render assistance to the fishermen. The lives of our fisher folk hang delicately in the balance because of the level of risk that they continually face, especially at sea. The proper resourcing of the respective national security divisions, such as the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard and the TTPS Coastal and Riverine Unit, have a critical role to play in the safety and well-being of our fishermen. Our fishermen deserve better treatment. That what is being meted out to them under this incompetent Minister of National Security. If ensuring their basic rights and entitlement of security and safety cannot be afforded to our TNT fisherfolk, then Minister Hines, you must come down from there. You must step down and give way to someone of greater competence, hopefully, who can carry out the function. As a result of the latest attack, National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines, he remains unresponsive. I believe one media house contacted him for a comment following my call on the 6th of July for him to immediately launch an investigation into the event as reported, with a view to seeking answers as to why the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was unable to render assistance to fishermen. And Minister Hines told them, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was brought to my attention that the response from the minister is that he was unaware of the issue. Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So I want you to wake up from your slumber and get to work, Minister Hines, and provide a report to this country as to why it is the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was not able to provide assistance to our fisherfolk. This is the level of callous, reckless, uncaring, and insensitive behavior that our citizens face at the hands of this wicked and incompetent PNM administration. Brothers and sisters, we are at a point where this government appears to be clueless, appears to be hopeless, brothers and sisters. We told you, and MP Rodney Charles told you, that when they were coming into office, they did not have a plan. They end up becoming the government of Trinidad and Tobago by VAPs, by hoodwinking, by mamagaying, by fooling the citizens of this country. However, brothers and sisters, I want to share with you this morning that the National Economic Transformation Master Plan that was presented to the country by the United National Congress, by the leader of the opposition and by our honorable political leader, Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bisesa, was all pinned on the development of the agriculture sector, brothers and sisters. The development of the agriculture and fishing sector was at the center of the diversification of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to take a brief moment just to share with you, brothers and sisters, from this agriculture creating a sustainable, secure nation, from this document, brothers and sisters, our National Transformation Master Plan, where it stated, and this is before COVID pandemic, before it is the country experienced this kind of lockdown, it stated agriculture, creating a food secure nation and creating jobs. The fact is food production has declined to its lowest ever under this administration. It continues. Agriculture is one of the main pillars of our economic transformation strategy. By reducing our nation's high food import bill of over $6 billion annually, agriculture saves precious foreign exchange while also generating foreign revenue, creating jobs, and helping in the fight against climate change. It will be the fountain of a food security in Trinidad and Tobago. Our leader has been speaking on food security since before 2020. This, brothers and sisters, was put out before 2020 this government came into office. We will make agriculture more attractive and commercially viable by implementing the right policies and institutions and ensuring the budgetary resources and land are available. Imagine IMWT touting as an achievement in agriculture that Keith Rowley is the first Prime Minister with an advisor on agriculture in the office of the Prime Minister. Is that an achievement? Can you tell us what has been the achievement in this critical sector with this advisor? Was this the same advisor who advised him that we do not have enough land for agriculture? Brothers and sisters, this transformation plan continue where the UNC is committed to the following initiatives. 1. Swiftly resolve all outstanding issues regarding former Caroni workers and cane farmers. 2. Cane farmers will be paid in full in the second and third tranches of EU funds legally mandated for that purpose. 3. lease 25,000 acres of Caroni land to create agricultural park to kickstart new agricultural activities. 4, we will lease 25,000 acres of same to registered farmers and private sector investors to create agricultural parks in strategic locations throughout the country. We will put idle lands to work. We will redirect CPEP to provide labor and infrastructure support to the farming communities in these parks. We will develop an agriculture insurance protection system. We will establish a multi-peril agriculture insurance program which will cover farmers against loss from flooding and drought, pest and disease, pre-their larceny, fire and business interruption. Farmers have been flooded out for years and they receive absolutely no support and no help from this Keith Rowley administration. It is here in our master plan, brothers and sisters, what this UNC administration continue to provide and propose in going forward to rescue Trinidad and Tobago. We will eradicate the scourge of pre-deal larceny. We will establish a buy local agricultural campaign and mandate local content for agriculture. The list goes on, brothers and sisters, because you see, agriculture is a very dynamic and important industry that belongs to all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So in concluding, I want to say that there is a national food basket where farmers and fishermen from all over our country, they give their blood, their sweat and their tears, and in some unfortunate situation, some of them lost their lives in the struggle to contribute to this national food basket. We have farmers from Couva, from Maruga, from Caroni, from Paramin, Wallerfield, Tabaquite, Lopino Bonnet, La Hoqueta, Barato, and even from Tobago. From every part of this country, farmers and fisher folk working in the hot sun and in the rain to feed their family, their communities, the country at large. And these farmers and our fisher folk, they deserve to be treated with greater respect. Today, I call upon the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, and his government to stop disrespecting our farmers and our fisher folk and to give the agriculture sector the respect it deserves. I thank you very much for this opportunity, and at this time, I believe we will now receive questions.
Yeah, we have some questions coming in via WhatsApp. MP Charles, the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, has said that in relation to the riots we saw in Port Spain last week, that people were being paid to protest. How do you respond to that?
This is typical of the PNM and Minister Hines in particular. Not thinking through things, not analyzing what could be the cause of the riots, not understanding the deep hurt of mothers whose boy children have been shot and killed, and some from behind, not understanding that he comes up with a trivial nonsense. In my view, foolishness, dotishness. I don't want to go into that kind of language about looking to blame somebody else, in particular the United National Congress, for something that happened in an area that is close to his constituency, a constituency which he cannot visit without security. So this is typical of the PNM. They do not think, they do not analyze, they do not research, they just operate from facts and from a perspective of first principles. The first idea that comes to hand, they go with that. So I challenge Minister Hines, bring the data, do not just talk. And in fact, you should have had the data before you spoke. But again, this is the sorry state of affairs. This is the sad form of governance that we have in China. Excuse for governance instead of rooted in basic, hardcore, well thought out, comprehensive, like my colleague who brought comprehensive response to the question of agriculture. What we get from them is awfully flippant nonsense. And so we dismiss that. Bring the data or shut up, Minister Hines.
With regards to the Prime Minister's statements about treating crime as a public health crisis, do you think the Prime Minister has lost a bit of credibility after the situation involving his supposed intervention in the selection of a top cop?
the Prime Minister has lost all credibility as far as the United National Congress is concerned. I do not understand why the PNM backbenchers do not do what the Conservative backbenchers did in the British Parliament by voting and indicating that the Prime Minister should leave because of his action. The Prime Minister is not sophisticated enough to understand the need for separation of powers. That you have the legislative branch, he is in charge of the executive branch, we have the judicial branch, we have our service commissions, etc. He willy-nilly interferes, does what he wants, he bullies his way, he shouts at, he excoriates persons who oppose to him, and therefore he is doing untold damage to democracy in Trinidad and Tobago. He has now made it the norm for a Prime Minister to interfere in what is supposed to be an independent process, a constitutionally guaranteed, enshrined process of selecting a commissioner of police. And what we may very well have is those persons aspiring to become commissioner of police, feeling that they must bend to the will of the Prime Minister. And that is dangerous for a democracy. This is not Eric Williams PNM. Dr. Rowley does not understand the nuances and the sophistication of a democracy and how it operates. It is not badgerism, it is not bullying, it is not shouting at, it is not going into a tantrum when he doesn't get his way. It is about sophisticatedly understanding the boundaries and the barriers that must be respected.
The Prime Minister has also indicated that he's going to seek guidance from the Attorney General in perhaps banning the sale of scrap iron in Trinidad and Tobago. How do you respond to that?
Again, he announces policy by VAPS and then announces he's going to consult. That is not the way first world countries operate. That's not how Singapore and Canada, the United States, the UK, Norway, Sweden operate. Before they articulate a policy, it is well thought of. You have done your consultations with your Attorney General, you have done your analyses, you have data brought to the table. But what our Prime Minister does, because he feels he could get away with it, he feels he could get away with it, whatever nonsense he does, that he, because of how we vote in Trinidad and Tobago, that he will continue to be elected. That's what he feels. So he could get up in the morning and decide that he is going to make whoever commissioner of police, and he will design it and he will do whatever he has to do. For example, he told us in Parliament that the process for electing a commissioner of police was flawed. He told us that with a straight face in Parliament. And yet, he, self-same Dr. Rowley, turned around the next day and used that flawed process to announce that he was going to appoint Commissioner of Police Gary Griffin. So he does not analyze, he doesn't think about consequences. I'm not going to shut down Petrotrin. And if you're looking at your fridge, and the next day we hear that all going home. So how is Trinidad operating? That is rum shop governance. Dr. Rowley must understand that we have elected him to give us a level of sophisticated, data-driven, well-analyzed, comprehensive policies. And he cannot continue to get away with foolishness, like getting up in the morning, announcing policy, and then going backward to retrofit, to speak to the Attorney General to find out if it makes sense. We dismiss that.
And one last question on this. The Prime Minister has also said that he takes full responsibility for the Attorney General, A.G. Armour. Given that statement, do you think that the Prime Minister should have been more diligent in selecting Mr. Armour, given his past?
I commend the journalist for asking a question to represent the interests of the Fourth Estate, to hold the government accountable. Dr. Rowley did not do a due diligence analysis before he appointed the Attorney General, Reginald Armour. Having been caught externally in Miami, where our Attorney General was removed from the case, and the the law firm that was representing the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. Instead of the Prime Minister being honest with us and saying, yes, I made a mistake, and here's what I am going to do to correct it. He doubles down. He's a bad John, our Prime Minister. You could say what you want, and if you don't like it, you could, he told me, I could go Guyana, I could go back, get the hell out of here, as the Calypso with Sparrow said. Our Prime Minister is letting down Trinidad and Tobago. He is operating as if Trinidad is a rum shop and a parlor and is not a serious place. He's not operating as if as Barbados, as Jamaica, as Antigua and Barbuda operates. We are now a laughing stock. Gets up in the morning, thinks up something, announces it, and hopes that we will understand or it will work out by that. So he announces public health emergency. Where did that come from? Who in God's name? What first world nation has done that? So we are operating on best practices. So the Prime Minister, we call on him to stop his nonsense, stop his dotishness, and understand who he is. He is the Prime Minister of 1.4 million of us, and he must act accordingly.
MP Ratcharam, you spoke about the recent pirate attack in Calabi. This, of course, is not the first time there have been a pirate attack in Calabi. Why do you think the government is not taking this issue of pirate attacks all on the coast seriously?
Well, there can be many issues. To start with, they have demonstrated how incompetent they are in addressing the issues affecting the citizens of the country, in all aspects of the country and all aspects of the communities. They have demonstrated how incompetent they are to effectively carry out the responsibility of a sophisticated cabinet or a sophisticated government, first and foremost. But what we have seen from time after time is clearly this government just do not care. This Rowley PNM administration just do not care. When we have 20 murders on a weekend, when we have predial larceny squad operating without vehicles, when it is we have a Coast Guard base set up at the Yacht Club in San Fernando and no vessel for the longest while, it is clearly they are out of touch with what is happening in the country. They are out of touch with the challenges facing all the industries and all the various sectors in this country. And it is high time that they wake up from them slumber and get to work or do the most honorable thing.
You mentioned that food security has been a major topic for discussion for a while. The Prime Minister said that he's going to Guyana to discuss land resources and so on. We know that the war in Ukraine is also creating food supply chain disruptions as well as fertilizer disruptions. Do you think that the government has been late out of the gate in terms of focusing on food security?
Definitely, they are too late has already been the cry, because to start with, going to Guyana to look for lands and investing into lands and all these things is one option. But what happens here to the amount of agricultural lands that we have that is being underutilized, where we have farmers with 2 acre parcels, former Caroni workers who received this as part of their visa, and they just cannot work the land because of the agricultural access road. It's the worst. It's in an extremely deplorable state. When we look at the drainage, these lands are being flooded out, and it is this government failure to maintain the water courses. I took the minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, Avinash Singh, on a tour of the agricultural lands right in Felicity. We have hundreds of acres sitting there that are being left idle, underutilized, and the minister went through and gave several commitments that he will work on this and he will work on that. From then to now, absolutely nothing has taken place except for the collapse of the Rodney Carter Bridge there in Felicity, where the minister saw the wing wall of that bridge was being eroded. So what I want to say is that, again, we had one minister who was a complete failure. He is gone. Now we have 3 ministers there in office, and we are not seeing anything different happening. Now the Prime Minister, again, wake up talking about agriculture, even though we have resources here in Trinidad to to boost up agriculture, to lift agriculture. And in our National Economic Transformation Plan, it talks about the amount of things that we can do to improve the agriculture sector, and by extension, diversify our economy, attract foreign exchange, create job opportunities. We have thousands and thousands of young people outside there who's looking for opportunities, but again, nothing is being done. It's either one, they are totally incompetent, or they just don't care.
And the last question, at the post-cabinet briefing, the Prime Minister seemed to suggest that food supplies are going to become a major issue. Do you think that the government needs to treat with increasing inflation and the coming food crisis as a national emergency?
Well, I will say that it is already a national emergency, and that is why the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, she told me as I was shadowing the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, along with the guidance of our Chief Whip, Dr. David Lee in the Parliament, to file this private member's motion to discuss the issue of food security, because way before 2020, it is something that our leader had the foresight and the vision that our country need to address. Because when we look at what has been happening since Dr. Rowley and his incompetent cabinet took office, from 2015, we had the agriculture contribution to GDP consistently declining. And what that basically means, if it is that our contribution of agriculture to GDP consistently declining from 1.48 billion to 1.27 billion from 2015 up to 2020, that means we are producing less and less and less food here locally. And when we saw the increase in our food import bill consistently again during that period, it means that Trinidad and Tobago is no longer an independent nation, and we are moving further and further away from our independence, because it is only when a nation can effectively feed themselves, then that nation is truly independent. And what we are seeing now is we are now being held, we are now operating at the mercy of the big players in the international market. And with all the dynamics and varying factors that are taking place in our society with respect to the war in Ukraine, with respect to the global pandemic, and there are several other viruses that making its way around the world, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So I believe that this administration, this PNM government, is not doing enough for agriculture, that they consistently demonstrating their failure, and they have failed to address the agricultural sector. And if it is that they need help, feel free. Speak with the leader of the opposition. We will put a team together and we will advise you and we will help you, because at the end of the day, when it comes to delivering to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, our leader has demonstrated that she do not discriminate. She provide for the entire nation. When she was giving out laptops, she gave laptops to all the children of Trinidad and Tobago. We saw where the Prime Minister was giving out laptops to some children in Diego Martin. So what happened to the rest of us? What happened to Hoover? What happened to opening up the ECC Center in Waterloo, so that those children can have an early start in life? At the last press conference that we did here, when I came here the last time at the Leader of the Opposition office to do the press conference, the leader told me to go about distributing seedlings to the folks in Port of Spain. And I remember going into Belmont with our Public Relations Officer, Dr. Kate Megu, and we went out in Belmont in Port of Spain and we distributed seedlings. And our leader consistently continued to distribute seedlings across the length and breadth of the country, from Kumoto, Manzanilla, come all the way back to Chaguanas, down to Siparia, across the country. We continue to distribute seedlings so that we will encourage our citizens to start their own backyard garden, that they can all start preparing food for their family, and by extension they will all be contributing towards our agriculture and the agriculture contribution to GDP. And if the entire country comes together and embrace the situation that we are currently facing and the crisis that is going to get worse, then we will all collectively be part of the solution. But what we are seeing is that the government at the helm is the main problem that the country is facing. And that is what is happening in this country today.
Well, thank you very much. There are no further questions. It is clear to all of us in the area of agriculture, in the area of national security, that the country is in crisis. And we call on the population to make their voices be heard and make their positions be known, because at the end of the day, all of us must live in this what was once a beautiful Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.